I'm Mayor Roger McMillan, and I have with me today our City Manager, Dan Galloway. And we're going to talk today about a topic that is oftentimes something you don't think about on a day-to-day basis, something you don't talk about on a day-to-day basis, but in many ways is maybe the most important issue that we have facing us today. And very simple issue, very simple topic, water.
It is.
Water.
It is simple, but it's probably the one service the city provides that touches every one of our lives every day.
Yes, sir. You're right.
I don't think any of the residents of the city could go one day without contacting that service. We all need water. It's probably the most vital service we provide.
And not be happy, I don't imagine anybody would be happy in our town if they had to go a day without water.
That's absolutely true. We don't want that to happen.
No, we don't want that to happen. And speaking of going without water, one of the things that has been very near and dear to my heart, Dan, as you well know, and to you also, is we've gone for a number of years in Stillwater, 18, 20 years, I believe, in fact, without a backup supply of water. In other words, if something had happened, heaven forbid, to the Call pipeline, then it would be down for any period of time. We had no place to get water. Go to the grocery store and buy a bottle of water, but that was about it. And just this other evening, or the Monday evening, the other night, the council approved, with much assistance from staff, an agreement with Oklahoma State University to become our backup water supplier. Talk about that a little bit, if you would, please.
Well, I will, and I know that we're so close to it that I think sometimes we just assume everyone knows where our water comes from. But just to remind people, every time you get a glass of water from your tap, where does that water come from? 100% of the water that we're using here in Stillwater, out of our taps, comes from one lake that's called Reservoir, which is 36 miles from here, and that's where all the water that we consume comes from. And if we did not have that source, we don't have another source. And so it becomes critical when you have one single line from one single lake providing water for over 60,000 people, when you take into account those we serve.
Critical is probably an underuse of that word.
It is.
It's more than critical.
It's more than critical. And we want to have that comfort level and that assurance to know if something happens, if that line breaks, if we have to shut it off for a repair, we absolutely can't go without water.
Exactly.
Now, 16, 17 years ago, OSU was also treating water from Lake Carl Blackwell for the campus, and they discontinued that and used our water. And so OSU is also dependent on our water, same source. But fortunately, I think for OSU and the residents, OSU is going to remodel, upgrade, and reopen their plant. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that, but the net result is we'll have two sources of water coming into this community, one to OSU and one to the city. If either one of us has problems with our system, we have the other one to rely on.
Exactly.
And that's what this agreement was all about. If one needs to be shut down for repairs, or if we have problems with it, we can rely on the other. So we'll continue to serve all the people of Stillwater, all the rural water districts we sell water to. OSU will provide water to their campus, but we now have an agreement that if they have problems with their system, we'll turn on a valve and provide water to them. We need to close our water line to Call Lake for some repairs. They'll turn on the valve and bring water to us. So we can sleep a little better when that all gets in place.
We're also proud of Stillwater, and we think we're progressive, and we are progressive and lead the pack in so many areas. But we have a community that we all judge in that manner. And we didn't have a backup supply of water. Right. As you said to me once 2 or 3 years ago when you and I discussed this, if the Call went down, we had about 1.5 days water in the towers, and that was it. And so my question is, of the other places you've been, is this not uncommon that there's not a backup supply, Dan? I mean, we just have never had one for all these years.
Yeah, it's not an uncommon problem, but most people have a solution to it. I think we have one of the better solutions I've seen. In the last two cities I served as city manager, Bethany, Oklahoma, and Clinton, Oklahoma. Bethany relied on wells, but if our wells went bad, our only backup was to purchase water from Oklahoma City.
But there was an alternative.
But there was an alternative. When I was in Clinton, we had the city owned a lake, much like here, we had a lake 20 miles from the city.
Right.
If it failed, we could purchase from a water conservation district, Foss Lake. In both of those cases, the cost of water from the backup source was twice of what it would have cost us to produce our own. So when we were making water for $2, if that broke down, we had to pay 3 or 4.
But at least you had water.
But at least we had a supply.
Right.
And in this agreement with OSU, price is not an issue because
I was going to have you bring that out.
It's really a nice arrangement. If we need to use 1 million gallons from them, we don't necessarily pay for it. We just put a credit on the book, so to speak, and when the day comes that they need water from us, they get $1 million back. So we're trading water,
We're gonna trade water.
gallon for gallon. That way it's totally fair. Nobody can argue on who's charging too much or not enough.
Right.
Every time we use a gallon of their water, all we have to do is return a gallon, and vice versa. And so I think that's probably as fair and equitable as you can ever be with two partners.
Not to mention the safety and security that the
Absolutely.
university doing this provides for the rest of the town. You know, and I just can't say enough. Editorialize a little bit about the gratitude to the university, gratitude to the leadership of the university in terms of recognizing this problem and working it out with us. And the concept that we'll trade water, there will be no money trading hands. We'll come to their aid, they'll come to our aid is one that I'm just personally very tickled about, very excited about. It's just a no-brainer.